For 23 years, wrestling has been one of Houston's TV favorites. It is Houston's oldest TV show. And the man who has been the voice of wrestling for all those 23 years is Houston's own Paul Boesch. Join us for the next 30 minutes as Channel 39 presents Wrestling in a Special Way. A look at the past and present of wrestling in Houston. Wrestling in a Special Way is being presented by the Furniture Outlet, where the public buys direct and saves. Now, here's Houston's own Mr. Wrestling, Paul Boesch.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to Wrestling in a Special Way. I guess that's a good title for it because wrestling has always been something special to me. I've started my 38th year in the game, and I've been sentimental about it and grateful to it and very proud of it. In a few moments, we're going to be showing you some of the mementos and memorabilia that have stuck to me over those 38 years. I had my first wrestling match professionally in 1932. In the year of 1933, I wrestled a fellow named Dick Shikat 4 times. Well, we wrestled a total of more than 7 hours. The first time it was 90 minutes, the second time it was 2 hours, and neither one of us had gained a fall. I wrestled him then 1 hour and 47 minutes and didn't get a fall on him, and he didn't get one on me. In the fourth match we had, it took him 1 hour and 45 minutes, and he got a fall on me. I don't know why he couldn't have gotten that in the first 10 minutes, and maybe I wouldn't have been so stubborn. But that's the way the game goes. And now these films, which you're about to see, have stuck with me through the years. They were taken at a pair of matches that we had. They were shown once on Houston television and placed on tape. We have decided that rather than redo the film itself, which is in black and white, that we would show you the tape that played here just 7 or 8 years ago. And that, too, might bring back some memories to you. So now we'll just tell Mr. Director Monty Man to roll that old tape. The gentleman with the long tights is a man named Dick Shikat, who had defeated, Jim Londos defeated for the world's heavyweight title. There is this young fellow named Boesch applying a head scissor, and here you see now with that fast and speedy getaway. This is a Japanese arm lock applied by Shikat, and now a leg stretch applied by, or a leg split applied to Shikat. Shikat was from Germany. He was a tough man. He wrestled in Houston many, many times back in the 1930s, as did his brother Paul Shikat. And here you see the pressure being put on the foot. The only thing I envy about this picture is the hair. So Shikat is trying to make the ropes. Those ropes are tied together. This was a big ring in the Bronx Coliseum, and they were tied together in the hope of keeping people from falling through them. This shoulder butt, and here is Shikat being pursued and mauled around by the shoulder butt, which was at that time one of the holds I favored. Here is a ride-em cowboy type hold, a figure 4 body scissor. But now we shift to another match, if you'll pardon the quick change of site. This is the St. Nicholas Arena, which was torn down recently, incidentally, and was a famous landmark. And Jack Sherry, one of the leading heavyweight contenders and one of the old-time tough fellows, is my opponent on this occasion. Now you see various versions of a head scissor as Sherry tries to get out. Here is a rocking chair split. The men sitting around the ringside there are the press and judges, as required by the state of New York. And here I go again for the same rocking chair split and use of the shoulder butt and the flying tackle. Sherry was a tough individual and a hard man to wrestle, as anybody would tell you. And like all of our home movies, you've got to say one thing about it. They end properly. They just come apart. But if you were that old and you had been sitting around in an old box for that long, I think that you would probably appreciate the fact that almost anything can happen to you. I assure you, that wasn't in our original. We have any more left of the film? We do? Well, we'll go back there again in just a minute. We'll show you that nothing is more indomitable than a man who wants to show home movies. So Sherry is still on the receiving end. And these pictures were taken by a friend of mine, I might add, or is that obvious? And he only took them when I was doing the assaulting. And some of these things that have happened to Sherry in this particular match, I'm happy to record, because men who knew him at that particular time wouldn't agree that they could be done. But Sherry, thank goodness, found himself on the canvas more times that night than he had in many and many a moon. How did the matches make out? Well, we'll talk about that in just a moment, but the hold right now is a hammerlock, as it was for a moment, and then Sherry found himself flipped over, even bust the string in his tights, which kept him busy for a while. Again, it's a hammerlock with Sherry on the receiving end, and here is that rocking chair split. Here is an arm stretch, and all kinds of fast movement. There must have been something wrong with this film. I couldn't have been that fast. Here is Sherry again being pursued with a rolling front headlock, but he was a hard man to get down to that canvas, and an even more difficult one to do anything with. Well, those films are old enough to be historic, so you'll understand the quality of it was not exactly the usual Channel 39 quality. But we're going to move into something more modern, something that covers the gap from 1933 to 1970. It also shows the ravages of time, for which I will not make any excuses. But this past summer, I had a match with Boris Malenko, as some of you will recall. I lasted through 10 minutes of it, and I'm sorry to say that was the last match of my career. Let's roll the tape for part of that match just to show you, by way of contrast, what happens. Yes, you're looking right now as Mr. TV announcer bounces around Boris Malenko, and if they were playing music, they probably would have played a waltz to the steps that I'm doing there. But of course, this is the manner in which a man's style changes in any particular sport. And in wrestling, of course, it changes like everything else, except that your way of thinking and your ability to use the things that you've learned sometimes come in handy. And it came in handy in that particular time. And one of the things that I picked up along the way, I picked this particular maneuver up when I wrestled in Japan back before the war. And it came in handy against Malenko, just as it has come in handy against many other people. Now, there's a target. Well, I couldn't miss a target like that. And it shows you how you think rather than act. So Boris Malenko now has the honor of having put me out of the wrestling game, if indeed there is any honor concerned with that. But let's just say that it came about as my last match, cane and all. So with Boris having brought the cane into the ring, I was able to get it away from Dick Raines and to chase him around just a little bit. But this shows you some of the contrast between the consummate showman. And why not? Wrestling is a great portion of that particular item, as well as the portion that makes a man conscious of the competition. So with Boris outside the ring and with his impatient adversary waiting inside and hoping maybe he'll stay out just a little bit longer so he can get a few more deep breaths, this is the way it looked in 1970. So we hope that you enjoyed this little bit of contrast. In the future portions of this particular program, we're going to bring you some slides that were taken of matches that included penalties at the end. Matches between Bull Curry and Irish Danny McShain, where the loser had to be painted green, where someone got their hair cut off, where someone had to bathe a jackass, and numerous other little tidbits that we have saved over the years. Well, you're looking at something that took place back about 1960 or prior to that time on St. Patrick's Day. You're looking at Irish Danny McShain as he tells the fans here that he insists on painting Bull Curry green as the contract called for. And here is McShain arguing because some of the fans thought Bull Curry should not have been painted green because he had injured his thumb. But McShain was armed with the paintbrush and ready to do a Rembrandt-like job on Mr. Bull Curry. But Curry's thumb was dislocated and Curry was having problems. And here you see Danny McShain telling one referee, Otto Koos, and Pepe Gomez, who handled that particular match, that he didn't care if Curry was in a cast. He wanted Curry and he wanted to paint him. And so this was the start of the paint. You see Curry holding on to that thumb for dear life. You see McShain obviously enjoying what he's doing and painting belly button first on Mr. Bull Curry. And Curry here writhing in pain because of the problem with the thumb dislocation, sinks down to his knee, and McShain goes about really enjoying his work. Forward, backward, around. And if you think body painting is new, then you should have been around at this particular time. The color, a beautiful green, and Pepe Gomez trying to tell Danny McShain to get going. And McShain turning to Pepe Gomez and said, I earned this right, and I'm going to take my time and enjoy it all the way through. And this was exactly what he intended to do. He had more argument with Pepe Gomez as Gomez says, get busy and paint because the man is hurt and he should be seen by a doctor. And finally, there was an argument with McShain and Pepe Gomez, and this happened. And that beautiful cloud of green is the can of paint exploding over Danny McShane's head. And here is McShain racing around the ring, paint in his face, paint in his eyes, paint all over him, and he's looking for some place to hide. But Bull Curry knows an opportunity when he sees it. He picked up the paintbrush, and it's Bull Curry at work now to spread the paint and spread the word. And McShain here advanced on the cameraman, who was perched up on the top turnbuckle. And I was the cameraman, and I screamed, "No, no, no, Danny, not me." And Danny turned around and headed for the opposite direction, struck all the paint on the canvas, and down he went. And with all of the subsequent times that he tried to get up to his feet, he assumed this position because the paint was slippery on the soles of the feet. And here is McShain in several ungracious poses. And that is symbolic of the paint match on St. Patrick's Day. But we have another match that we would like to show you, and this is one in which Waldo von Erich wrestled Dory Dixon, and the loser was to have his head shaved in the ring. And we go that way to Monty Mann to show you this picture of Waldo von Erich out cold just prior to having his head shaved. And into the ring came the barber with Waldo still out. They propped him up in a chair, held him down, and the barber went to work. He carefully went over the head of cropped hair of Mr. Waldo von Erich. Here you see Waldo brushing some of the unconsciousness out of his eyes as the barber goes to work. He's got a patch quilt started on him, and then Waldo started to come to, and referee Otto Kuss grabbed him in this particular hold, both arms locked, dropped him down into the chair again, and hung on for dear life because the barber was about to go to work, and with Dory Dixon holding on to the feet, and looks there like Otto Kuss may have gotten sliced by the clippers, but it ain't so. Actually, Otto is that way most of the time. The barber is a real excited individual, as you'll see in all of these pictures, all of that hysteria registering on his face. Right now he looks like a Mohawk Indian and looks like he may have done a job on himself, but he did manage to get Waldo von Erich properly shorn of those locks with the clippers. And don't get them mixed up. The fellow whose head is covered there is the man who's getting shaved, not Otto Kuss. Otto is being held, but mighty effort by Waldo von Erich to extricate himself from the predicament in which he finds himself. But the clipping went on and on and on, and here is a close-up look at how a man feels when he's getting his head shaved, or clipped rather in this particular case. But the shaving is yet to be done, and here you see the lather being placed on and the razor being readied to give Mr. von Erich the shave that he needs. And there again, the hysterical approach of the barber. You can see all that excitement in his face. And come to think of it, Otto Kuss doesn't look too good either. But there, as they go to work shaving the head of Waldo von Erich, the barber manages to get every hair, and he does a magnificent job of giving him a perfect haircut. Well, that took place too back in the 1950s, and we hope that you enjoyed looking at it. We've got some more good ones for you, so if you'll stick with us, we'll be back right after this word. The next slides that I'm about to show you, I took somewhere in the early 1960s. There were a couple of fellows around here named the Dalton boys, Jack Dalton and Jim Dalton. They wrestled Bull Curry, and again, this was one of those paint matches, and Jack Dalton lost. As you will see him here, he is claiming foul, and that Bull Curry fouled him, and there was considerable argument going on with Jim Dalton trying to hold his brother up and carry on the argument at the same time. But the argument was to no avail, and despite this look on Jack Dalton's face, he had to go through with the painting and to receive his coat of paint, which Bull Curry applied with evident relish. There was no doubt about Bull stepping in there to show that he knew how to wield that paintbrush. He learned some of it in his match with McShain, which you saw earlier. But Jack Dalton, holding on to his midsection, was getting the same sort of treatment that Bull got. Now keep your eye on Jim Dalton as he wanders around the ring, and Jim Dalton grabbed the can of paint and thought he was going to sneak up behind Bull Curry and give Bull Curry a paint bath, but it didn't quite work out that way. Bull Curry was alert. He grabbed hold of the paint, and there you see him as it dribbles across the canvas and through the air as he gives it to Jim Dalton and spreads the good paint all over. And here is what happened. With Jim Dalton down, Jack Dalton down, you just couldn't do too much about standing up, frankly, and Bull Curry swinging that fist of his as he always does in any kind of a situation. He believes that the best answer to anything is to hit first and ask questions afterward. The Dalton boys were trying to corral the Bull and came close to it, except that Bull was taking advantage of the slipperiness and hitting at the time that they were trying to gain their footing, and then got them together in this particular manner. But it was a situation that was really made Bull Curry's liking. He enjoyed it thoroughly, but not so the Dalton boys, who found themselves in this kind of a position as Jack Dalton literally fell all over his brother Jim. And there you see them, the picture of defeat and disgust as Bull Curry went out of the ring, leaving them. And as Jack Dalton raised up, he remembered that he said he had been fouled, and he decided to cling to that premise. But he got no sympathy. And in this sort of Grecian pose, and in this one that follows, you see the true spirit of a man who decides he's not going to be beaten. So there you have another paint match, but that led to another one. And not paint this time, but the Dalton boys insisted that Bull was a dirty wrestler, and somebody suggested that maybe the loser should take a bath in the ring. And this was the result of that particular challenge. Here you see Jack Dalton as he insists that his foot was outside the ring and that he should not have to take the bath. But he was placed in this tub, which you see being filled with water that had been standing under the ring all night long in those buckets so that it would be available. But Bull Curry deposited him in there despite the temperature of the water, and then decided that it was time for the soaping. And here you see the soap coming out of, the liquid soap coming out of that bottle all over Jack Dalton, and Bull Curry, as he poured it, just poured the whole bottle into that tub of water, and it splashed all over the canvas, splashed all over Jack Dalton, and then Bull Curry went to work to see if he couldn't improve on what the soap and water was already doing to Jack Dalton. Here you see him now as he gave him the massage that produced the suds, and Dalton trying desperately to protect himself. But Dalton got out of the tub. He grabbed the first man available. He swung him around, and the next thing you know, his brother Jim had been placed in the tub, and when Bull Curry saw that, he decided that this was an opportunity to do just a little bit more soaping, which he did. And there you see Jim Dalton as he splashes around, no lifeguard on duty, but he splashed around to try to make his way out of the tub. When he got out of the tub, he grabbed his brother Jack and threw him in it, and then turned him upside down. And here you see Jack Dalton being turned over on the canvas, and then coming out from underneath that tin shelter that he was wearing so ungraciously, and covered with soap, covered with water. Here is Jack Dalton rising up to his feet, a picture of defeat and despair. But it happened to Bull too. He found out that suddenly when you get soap on the bottom of your shoes and you're standing in a puddle, it can happen to you. And the Dalton boys tried to help each other up to their feet and failed. Curry gingerly walking in the background as the Dalton boys go down again, and try as they might, they found it impossible to rise up. But when they did, the soap was in the eyes, the soap was all over, and they tried to maintain it. But here is a picture of true brotherly love as the Dalton boys maintain the clincher. So there was the famous bathtub battle between the Dalton boys and Bull Curry. And we tell you we're going to have some more of this kind of action for you after we have this word. We hope you're enjoying this. You know, I've inflicted these slides on many guests in my home at various times, and we thought perhaps you might enjoy the same sort of commentary they get when they see them. But right now we have a battle between Tony Borne and Irish Danny McShain. And here you see McShain, who in his day was one of the toughest men that ever stepped into a ring, battling with Tony Borne. This was a match that left McShain in this particular fashion. Now, this was the end of the second fall, and here you see McShain being led to the corner by his second, Pat Hatchell, and here you see the ending of the third fall as Tony Borne took advantage of the injury and put the neck breaker on him. Now, this particular match had an argument that ensued. You see Leo Newman, the manager of Tony Borne, in the middle there. But each had called each other a dirty jackass, and somebody decided that this animal here would be bathed by the loser. But McShain was out. He was out cold on the canvas, and he couldn't bathe the jackass. Into the ring sprang Mike Clancy, and other wrestlers who decided that Leo the Lion Newman was the man who was going to bathe that jackass, and there's Red McKim in behind Leo the Lion, and they all lent their weight to the argument, and Leo took off his jacket and he went to work, and he started to scrub the jackass, and this was the action as he applied the brush and the soap suds, proving that he would do it. Now, in the background, you may see McShain from time to time lying there, but I could swear that Irish Dandy McShain had one eye open. Somebody sneaked up behind him, and it was McShain who doused Leo the Lion Newman, soap suds, bucket, and all. And Leo went racing around that ring, trying to shake loose all the monsters that were crawling in his eyes, and the soap flowing in there. The wrestlers were bugging him. The jackass was after him. The man with the jackass tried to lead the two. The jackass came up and kicked him, or at least I think he's kicking him. I hope he's kicking him. And Leo the Lion Newman was backed up into the corner where Tony Borne was handcuffed to the rope so that he wouldn't interfere with the action. And here is a picture of distress. Leo the Lion Newman and others as they bug him, with Tony Borne telling him to get that jackass out of there, and that was it. But now we have come into another match. You are looking now at one of the more modern penalties that have taken place. You're looking at Dick Raines as he hovers over Boris Malenko, and Boris Malenko is about to get his head shaved because he lost a match to Wahoo McDaniel. And the head shaving in this particular instance was done also while Boris Malenko had been dropped on his head. You see Wahoo in the background as the clippers go to work on the head of Boris Malenko. The man wielding the clippers is Bill Varley, who was more accustomed to changing tires and to changing hairdos. But he took a quick advantage and went into the action on Boris to get his head shaved, as Wahoo made sure that he got every single hair off the head. You see the Indian inspecting it there, and with that look of glee that comes on a red man's face when he senses a scalping job being well done. But here Boris started to recovered just ever so slightly, but then he passed out again, didn't quite make it, and put his head up against the tummy of Mr. Bill Varley, so Wahoo moved in there, determined to hold him clean. And now you see the head coming shaved and the bald pate of Mr. Boris Malenko shining and glistening under the big arc lights as Bill goes to work. But now shaving was the order of the day. This is just a clipping, and Bill clipped him well. So the head was then lathered. Here you see the lather being applied. Tiger Conway came in there to make sure that it was done well. Referee Dick Raines was in, and the razor was put in the hand of Bill Varley, and he went to work to shave the big, round, edge-shaped head of Mr. Boris Malenko. And Boris, out like the proverbial light, being held by Wahoo, being held by Tiger Conway and Dick Raines, and quickly you see Bill Varley racing over that head with the razor to make sure that he was going to not have to face the wrath of Boris Malenko. And here's a close-up look of what it looks like when a man starts to recover from being knocked out. And this, well, we just threw that in there to see if you were paying attention, because we hope that you were. But Boris Malenko got his head shaved. Bill Varley lost the friendship of Mr. Malenko permanently. And we hope that tonight we have been able to just give you an insight into how wrestlers look at wrestling, and particularly how I do. Some of these things are very valuable mementos, and the memories I've stored up over the past 38 years certainly are invaluable to me. Most of all, those that I've stored up right here in Houston with so many of my friends. It's been good to have you here for Wrestling in a Special Way.